So, who are you? What do you do and why?
My name is Kika Tarsi. I'm a second-year doctoral student in Kenny Davies' lab, and I study skink lizards within a long-term habitat fragmentation experiment in Australia.
Is that Wog?
Yes.
What is Wog?
Wog is a project that was started in the 1980s, and they took a continuous eucalyptus forest and carved it up into a lot of little pieces, and then went in and planted a pine matrix. So essentially we study what happens when you carve a forest up, which is often the case if you put in roads or subdivisions or, a new shopping mall. You fragment the habitat that was there. So we study the biological consequences of that process.
My name is Jeff McClenahan, and I am a PhD student in Kenny Davies' lab. Work on habitat fragmentation, and specifically work on a project in Australia that is examining the effects of insect communities in eucalyptus forests that have been clear-cut and then replanted with pine plantations for commercial use. And specifically, I work on ants and ant communities.
What led you to biology and ecology? Was there a particular incident?
I was always an animal lover, and so going into college I was on the pre-vet track. I was bound for veterinary school, and I started getting very frustrated with some of the processes of the pre-vet track and the competitive atmosphere, and once I sort of turned to ecological research, I found that I could still interact with wildlife and put my efforts towards conserving wildlife in a different way, in a way I had never really heard of before. So I signed up for a field course in South Africa and just traveled around and lived in a wildlife park and studied everything we came across, and that was it. And I was hooked.
Sounds like fun.
Yes.
There was a moment, but it had been germinating for a long time because I had always wanted to try to figure out how I could integrate science and my love of outdoors, and ecology was just a perfect match for that. But the moment that happened was when I was sitting one day in an insect biology class, and it just suddenly dawned on me that insects are the most incredible and important organism on the planet. Well, okay, maybe not the planet, but
What do most people not know about skinks?
Most people don't know that skinks are lizards. There's a lot of cool things about them. They're one of the most diverse groups of vertebrates on the planet. They have various levels of limb reduction, so you have some with really tiny arms, some with no limbs at all, and some with really long normal proportions, which is kind of cool.
The blue-tongued one.
And the blue-tongued one is awesome and is huge.
Most people know that ants are social and have castes, but I don't think that they truly appreciate how divided those castes can be and how specific the jobs can be. For example, there's a class of workers that does nothing but tends brood, and so they move small eggs around all day long and make sure that they're getting enough food and that they are rotated so that they're getting proper heat and not getting too cold or too hot. There are castes that do nothing but farm fungus, and the fungus breaks down leaf litter that they bring in so that they can actually eat it, so they eat the fungus. So yeah, I think most people don't really appreciate how intelligent and productive they are.
How is writing useful to you in this field?
I'm actually lucky in that I wanted to be a writer for a long time, because most of science for me at this stage is writing. We write grants, we write papers, we write letters of recommendation, we write articles, we write press releases. 99% of what I do is writing, actually.
Well, in many different ways, actually. What we do as scientists, I think we have an obligation to disseminate that information to both the scientific community and to the public. So, for us, I think the challenge for writing is one, developing a good technical writing skill, a good science writing skill, but we also have to be able to, communicate with people who are not scientists. And so I think that having a good grasp of how to do that in written form, whether it's through print or blogs or whatever, is key. And so without being able to have opportunities to practice that, to take classes, what we do means very little to the outside world. So.